as much, is because they're basically gung-ho. But basically, Ghost is going to be working with these guys closely, and they're already the admins on like most of these pages, right? So, with the exception of Vote Wexit and Wexit BC, Ghost will be the admin on every single one of those pages. All right. So what's going to also end up happening is each one of those pages is going to have our link, so that we can still, of course, get our link out there and get people to join up. When it comes to my guerrilla marketing efforts, they haven't completely stopped. I just kind of focus on we would start working together again, and that would be great. And like, Ghost put an olive branch out there before with his video, and we are serious about that. We would like to work with them. We are not definitely going to keep the branding the way it is, and kind of have an independent route of Wexit. But at the end of the day, us and Wexit have the same goal, and we realize that. So, diving in more with the AAP, I don't know if you guys know him, but he is the admin on like every single separation page. He also, of course, is a very successful man as well. But yeah, they want to work more closely with Ghost, and Ghost is gonna speak, do different speaking tours with them. They kind of hope to do is to go to these different reserves and to get the reserves on board, obviously, because First Nations people are going to be key to this, right? And so Ghost himself isn't First Nation, but his wife is. So he's hoping that his wife can do, a lot of the speaking, especially at these events and whatnot, and maybe he can support her in that effort. But yeah, no. So it's going to be great. They're going to go to all the different reserves, and they already have some inroads now. So, I mean, that's been awesome. In terms of the AAP, kind of looking at them under a little bit of a microscope here, the biggest thing that I would say to people about the AAP is you should go read their constitution, their party constitution. And the reason I say this is because it's unlike any other provincial party. It basically gives a lot more power to the members, so that the members can actually hold the party brass accountable. What kind of, if you agree with the kind of approach that they're taking. But AAP has also been, in talks with the Freedom Conservative Party as well. In terms of where those talks have gone, not too sure. I'm hoping that we can kind of bring everybody together. That would be my ideal goal. Derek and the FCP have been a part of that conversation, obviously. What else can I tell you guys? Just trying to think here, because there was some other stuff I was going to go. So, maybe just a quick shout out, I guess, to some of the events that are happening or have happened. I went to the Wexit rally on the weekend there, and a bunch of people were able to go, which was great, from the Discord. And yeah, I got everybody's number, and we met up, had some coffee at the Starbucks there, and it was a great time.
Okay,
Even
good.
somebody that didn't even have
All
a
right.
cell phone was there. I managed to get him there.
I'm
And
muted in the Discord, sorry. I just want to make sure I'm
yeah,
not
so
over talking him.
we talked, we had a good conversation, got to know each other a little bit. Fortunately, there wasn't a ton of time because we decided we wanted to go to the rally, obviously, and so we did do that. It was great, having if people are going, you should let us know. And not only that, if you want to take even more initiative, find out who else is going. Get their numbers. Start up a group text chat, just like I did. It's fairly easy. Group text chat. Put a message out there where you want to go, what time, and then hopefully some or most people can show up. And yeah, I'd say overall it was a success from that standpoint. But the rally itself, I did have some concerns about, obviously. Uh, I'll talk about each speaker real quick. The first speaker I think was Jessica Temple or something. I think I have her name wrong, but anyhow, she was the leader of the women's for Women for Alberta Independence Facebook group. I thought she did a great job in terms of explaining what her group's kind of all about, and what direction maybe we should kind of look at overall. Uh, she was very well spoken. I did enjoy to hear from her. The next guy was the guy from City Hall, or at least trying to get into City Hall. Um, and I did like that too. Our City Hall has been corrupt for a very long time here in Calgary, because people are ignorant and vote in the exact same people every single time, and they've been there for years and years and years, and they're corrupt as fuck. Um, so it's good to hear that some of these guys from the municipal side of things are trying to get involved with things like Wexit, and are trying to get their name out there so that we can actually, create real change in city council and hear about it, which would be so beneficial for us. In terms of the next person, that was I believe Tom Manley. He was a veteran. I did think he was well spoken and overall a good guy. What he was saying didn't really have too much substance to it or too much to do with the movement, and I felt this was kind of a common theme throughout the night. Kathy Flett, although she was good at getting the crowd riled up, didn't really, you know, have much platform there. There wasn't much substance. It was all just rhetoric that we constantly hear. And then Peter comes on, and it's all rhetoric with him, and he's not even charismatic. The crowd wasn't even going for him. He was getting they were getting more cheers. Kathy Flett was getting more cheers than he was at the end of the day. Like he didn't even speak for long either, right? And at the end of his speaking, he was saying that he was going overtime, which was hilarious because he barely spoke at all. So basically, if you notice, and this has kind of been a theme throughout his campaign, is Peter kind of wants himself to be disconnected from the grassroots. He wants people to, and that's sort of the mentality that he's trying to build around him. And that only has so much success. What that's going to do for him is it's going to get him a extremely loyal base of a decent amount of people, not that many, some people anyway, and then a lot of the other people are going to be disconnected, and they're not really going to feel like they're contributing anything to them. And at the end of the day, that turns a lot of people off, and a lot of people are becoming apathetic and are we're losing momentum every single day, and it's sad to see because it could have been done so much better, and it could have been done in a way that engaged people in terms like that had Wexit go to people and actually speak to them and listen to them and listen and factor in what everybody said, and where are the common themes, what is everybody saying that everybody else is saying, all right, and how do we respond to it in a constructive way. And so far, as I said, none of that. It's all hype. It's all fucking rhetoric. Hasn't been much of any substance. I'll talk a little bit about some of the other stuff that's happened lately. There was a freedom talk with Preston Manning, and all them. Or yeah, I think it was Preston Manning. Or Stockwell Day. That's who it was. Sorry, Stockwell Day. Just to correct myself there. But yeah, apparently that went really well. Of course, a lot of the people involved in that are some of the typical politicians. So it is, of course, there's always going to be a little bit of skepticism with that. But overall, I heard that there was more substance in that presentation, and they actually talked more about the hows and the whys, right? Uh, there is a event tonight that's probably happening like right now with Rebel Media. in Edmonton. Funny enough, we actually had a banner set there with our Unify the West logo and everything, and sitting in that hotel waiting for somebody to grab it. And because I don't think anybody's going to the Rebel show tonight, nobody actually is there to pick the banner up, which really sucks. But honestly, I guess should have saw that coming, considering people don't want to pay to get in, which that's fair. Let me think here too. What else have we been doing lately? Um, oh yeah, so Ghost has spoken to. I don't know if you guys are aware of Alberta to the Point. Alberta to the Point is a well-known speaker, and he does a lot of videos as well. He actually was a speaker with the Wexit crowd, and unfortunately, um, he wasn't able to stay on as their speaker. They actually canceled him and canned him and threw him out. And I won't go into details because they are private details, but what I will say, it was completely unfair and it was completely unjustified the way that they handled it. Um, but regardless, he's moving forward. He's not dwelling on the past, and he's excited to work with us. We actually reached out to him after we saw that he had problems with Wexit, much like we had problems with Wexit, and we figured, hey, we have a great platform. We have a lot of content creators. We have a lot of brilliant minds that are coming together. Why not jump on? Why not get him on board, right? And he's on board, which is great. It's going to bring a huge amount of followers to this Discord. This guy gets hundreds of thousands of views on his videos. He wants to do podcasts with Ghost and Steve, and talk about a bunch of different issues. He likes to keep his videos fairly short, to the point, as you probably guessed, which is part of what his appeal is. And yeah, I think he's just going to be a great boost. He sounds like a great guy. He gave us a bunch of suggestions in terms of how we should move forward. We've taken a lot of them, one of them being rebranding, of course. But we're also going to be setting up a Facebook page here soon, and then grow that. Of course, right now we just have a Facebook group, so definitely want to get a page as well going. And I'll be coordinating with Ghost on that to make sure we get that right. What else? I'll mention the MDs, just for the sake of mentioning it. That basically, we still need people to go out to their local officials and pressure them and basically tell them, hey, support Wheatland County's motion, right? And so far, a lot of municipal districts have come on board, including Medicine Hat. But anybody that is in rural Alberta, and if you haven't heard about this yet, please reach out to us, because we have information that we can give you to help you go and pressure your local official to support the Wheatland County motion. And talking about the Wheatland County motion, it's demanding a lot of great things. I know Big Al, he's into Project Confederation, so I'll give him a little shout out here. That a lot of the stuff that's in Project Confederation, such as going with the new pension plan, going with the new police force, doing our own income taxes, that is all in Project Confederation, basically. And they have it all on this motion. But the key with this motion is that if we don't get what we want, then a referendum for separation is triggered, and it will happen. Now, of course, timing this is going to be key, but I do think that this is one of the right routes to take, for sure, and something that people on the ground level can really affect, because our local officials do have to listen to us a lot more so than provincial or federal officials. In terms of the constitutional conventions, I'll talk a bit about that. We do have a bit of a plan for the constitutional conventions. If you guys want details, I encourage you to reach out to Cody, Universal Fractal. You can reach out to Doug Force or Ed too. But Universal Fractal, he's very available. He's helping coordinate this effort. So definitely, he's probably one of the best guys to reach out to for that. And what they're hoping to do is hit all these small towns. They're gonna go rural first. They're not coming to the cities, guys. Sorry. You're gonna accomplish a lot more in these rural places. With the
I think
Constitution.
actually, sorry, just want to correct you there for a second,
Yeah.
if I can.
Yeah,
I think
you go ahead and talk about it, Cody. You know more than me. Go for it,
Well, I
buddy.
was just gonna say, I think they are planning on trying to set one up for Edmonton. So everything else was point on, man. I just figured I'd throw that out there.
Perfect. I just thought you were going rural first, but yeah, one of the first places they're going is Drayton Valley, and hopefully they'll coordinate with Jamie. She's one of our admins. She lives in Drayton Valley. She can help them out with that. So they'll have Doug Force hopefully on Skype, and he'll do a question answer. So if you guys have any questions after the presentation, he's right there to help you out with that. And yeah, it's it's great to see all the different approaches and the different efforts that people are putting in. I just love to see it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm missing. Oh yes, great one. We are planning to do some drives and some charitable events come Christmas time. One of our admins, Jamie, she's been pushing for this the entire way. She wants to maybe focus more on positive impact that we can make with in our communities rather than protests that piss people off. Now, when it comes to my mentality about it, I love the positive stuff. I think it's gonna have probably even more impact than any of our more negative protests do. I do think that there's room for both, but I do think that we also need to keep in mind that we don't want to piss people off or ruin their day, right? So, for example, if we close down a road, people can't get to work. Already, we've turned a bunch of people against us, right? If we, on the other hand, have like fucking convoys lined up on either side of the road, and there's a bunch of signs and banners everywhere as you're going by, well, I mean, the only people pissed off with us are going to be fucking liberals. So there you go. But anyhow, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, Jamie's had this idea from like day one, and then of course now Wexit's doing something similar. I wonder where they got that idea from. Anyhow, yeah, I think that is pretty much it. Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say, I guess, because I'm part of what I'm doing is I'm looking at my mission statement and kind of going off that and telling you all the progress we made in those different areas. Is just to encourage people to support Western businesses. Anything that has a headquarters in the West. Anything that is a local Western business, we should be conscious of it and try to support them as much as we can without, fucking up our own lives. But anyhow, so with all that being said, and I've covered a lot of things here in terms of what we've been doing and stuff, is there any questions? I would love to hear your questions. Now's the time to go to Town Hall Notes. That's your channel right there. Type in your questions. I'm happy to answer them. If I can't answer them, I'll maybe get somebody else to answer them.
I could just say this. Would you guys like me to relay a question to them?
Any questions, guys? Questions? If you want to just voice your question
Sora
over
Rebel, I can always ask them a question.
I don't see any in there yet, so. Yeah, I'll give people a chance to put their questions in. I'm trying to eat anyway. Been trying to eat this whole time. For those that aren't aware, that I didn't already tell you, my girlfriend took up well, she's not my girlfriend, but she took up my whole day. I was shopping. She fucking took forever, so I'm kind of winging it a little bit here. So I apologize if it's coming off a tad sloppy tonight. I'm also the only founder on, so
No worries, guys. I just wanted to ask them. So, yeah, you guys are kind of new to listening to this. Like I said, like, you know, a lot of what they're saying is really fascinating.
well,
So,
I feel like that isn't a question. Why not? I feel like it's more like a statement, and I agree with your statement. I think that billboards will have a positive impact, but I guess it depends on the messaging of the billboard, I suppose. As long as it has positive messaging. I suspect Lance has a question for me. I mean, I'm a little disappointed in the Rebel. They haven't really reported on Wexit much. They have a little bit here and there. But I feel like they could focus on it a bit more. And I also feel like, I don't know, and this is just my opinion in general of the Rebel, is that some of what they report on is kind of just stuff I don't care about. Like the whole trans thing, like that case or whatever. Like, it's like, I don't care. Can we please move on? Like, you've been posting about this for like fucking weeks. Get over it. How do you feel about the Wexit Party of BC? I've begun to communicate with a few people about organizing rallies in Okanagan and wonder how effective the political parties will be in light of the Downing situation. Well, so here's my take on it, Lance. Is first off, unfortunately, BC is gonna be kind of, I won't say it's an afterthought, but they're not gonna be first to the finish line. They're gonna be one of the last to the finish line. Okay? The Clarity Act clearly makes it obvious that only one province can separate at a time. BC is not gonna separate on its own without Alberta and Saskatchewan. They're not gonna be the one to take the leap and take the first step. Alberta is gonna have to be the one that takes the first step, and Saskatchewan. But once that happens, then Wexit BC can maybe become more effective, because BC will realize, okay, these guys are serious. They're leaving the country. What does that mean for us? And the answer to that question is that Alberta, being a sovereign nation, is going to have complete control over the goods that flow through our land. And so now, with that in mind, we have a ton of leverage over BC. And BC is going to have to realize that it's in their best interest to come aboard. It just is. Maybe we can work something out with them staying in Canada, as long as we're getting a good deal. But regardless, we'll have the leverage. Now, talking about it from BC's point of view, it's pretty divided in BC. I'm not going to lie. Metro Vancouver and Victoria, the majority of people there are completely against even the idea of this. But there are a lot of upset people in northern BC and in eastern BC. As further inland you go, the more angry you see. You know what I'm saying? But definitely Wexit BC in the beginning stages, I'd say, is going to have potential success within these regions. Let's be honest, guys. Wexit BC as a party, never fucking ever will they win a seat in Metro Vancouver or the island. They won't. Just telling you that fucking flat out right now. They will not. You can hope and dream all you want. It's not going to happen. But regardless of what government's in power, if Alberta has separated, then BC is going to have to look at separation seriously. They're not going to have to think of it as a joke anymore. So,
yeah, that's good. I'm with you there.
Yeah, one thing I'd say too, Lance, is it seems we have like a few people like in the Dawson Creek area and stuff too. Like Kat, she's from that area. She already had like the banner going there and got like a lot of like likes on Facebook and all that sort of stuff. I was happy to see that. But yeah, no, that's another great area to think about too. People, shout out to people in Dawson Creek. You know, maybe get out there, get something organized. I think there's enough of you that you can make an impact. Just saying.
Yeah, I had lots of response right into the Kootenays when
Yeah.
I did a roll call for the Okanagan. So hoping to see some good support.
Yeah, guys, if you see people that are in your area, don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, yeah, this is an anonymous platform, but this is all about bringing Western Canadians together. So I understand that some people may not be comfortable sharing information. That's completely fine. But get to know your fellow people. That's all I'm saying. Whether you do it through Discord, you get their phone numbers, you can meet in person, you shake hands, you have coffee. That would be the best. But however far you want to go, please just think about doing that. Go to the roll call channels. Lance just mentioned it. Alberta roll call shows you all the people from Alberta, Saskatchewan from Saskatchewan, BC from BC, Manitoba from Manitoba. So check
Yeah,
those
I
channels
did
out.
manage to connect with a couple, and they, the one guy was a member of the Reform Party when it was first starting, and then the admins on the Facebook page connected me with their Okanagan rep. So I'm just going to see how that goes.
Yeah, and that's great. And the other thing too, guys, like if you guys have skill sets that you think can be useful to us or to the movement in general, let us know. We want to know what you guys can bring to the table. What you guys are good at. Because we know that everybody's good at something, and the best way to accomplish this is to find what everybody's good at and set them on that fucking path.
Turn him up a little
Anyhow, let's see, any other questions?
Oh, so Sora, I'm just gonna cover this one real quick. So
yeah.
one of the fellows
We
in
have
our
Why Not's
Discord
question.
responded
Do you know
with
that there was a case many years ago wherein
I'll
northern
just
BC
copy
wanted
paste
to
it.
separate from southern. I did not know that. Again, this is not a very this is a yes or no question, but that's okay. I did not know that. That's a very interesting fact. Here is a question. What about BC's connection to Asia? We do a lot of business there. Well,
Oh.
in terms of BC's connection to Asia, I'm assuming that the Chinese are gonna basically, support us in our efforts to get to Tidewater because ultimately they benefit more than anybody else because they're getting to buy our oil and stockpile it because that's exactly what China's been doing for years. They've been stockpiling oil like a crap ton. And I mean, the other thing too is we have to remember that BC isn't the only option. A lot of people have been talking about building a pipeline to Manitoba. My mom, she's actually talked to this guy who's like, he's an oil and gas guy. He knows what he's talking about, and he told us that it is possible. It's not. It's very possible. It's very doable. It's not going to be overly costly. It's not going to take a crap ton of time. It's a viable route, and it's probably almost more of a viable route than BC is anyway. So regardless of what BC says and what BC does, we do have another option out there, and hopefully BC sees that it's better that the oil go there than go to Manitoba, because ultimately BC will benefit from the profits of all this oil money. Regardless, yeah, that's I guess my answer to that question. BC would be faced with tariffs and fees, Have you seen the Wexit videos by that Indian online news channel? No, I have not.
Okay. Alright, I'll keep going, guys.
Yeah, it sure is.
Alright.
I heard too that the actually I think it was Pragmatist that was telling me the other day when we went out for coffee. He told me that icebreakers aren't even going to be a big concern because in the Hudson's Bay in recent years the temperatures have been warmer and warm enough that yeah, sure, we're going to need icebreakers, but we're not going to need them for like a crap ton of the year. We're not going to need like a ton of them. and it's not going to cost us a crap ton of money. So making this even more economically feasible option, right? All right. Well, I think now. Does any? I guess my last question to you guys before we move on to the next little bit here is: does anybody have any more questions? Feel free to voice over the mic if you have a question. Okay. With that being said, I'm going to open the opportunity for open floor now. So what open floor is basically is you can just go ahead and speak about, preferably about kind of what we've been talking about already. But if you have something else that you want to talk about, that's fine too. Try to keep it to a minute, 2 minutes if you can. If it goes longer, that's not the end of the world. But yeah, if anybody wants to speak, you can either indicate in town hall notes, maybe let me know over at the mic here. So otherwise, we will be diving right into environment. Okay, I will take that as we're diving into environment now. All right, so as I said earlier, we're going to divide environment into 4 categories. I'm just going to put this out there that one of my categories is industry versus the environment. Now, I know that there's a lot of industry guys in here. There's people that work in oil and gas and work in other industries that you could consider, fairly high polluters, right? Overall on a general scale, right? If anybody wants to kind of take over that discussion, I'd say that'd be awesome. I know why not. I know that you're in the oil industry, so maybe think on it. I'm gonna go into climate change first, but maybe you want to do industry versus the environment. Take lead on that discussion because you can probably speak to it better than I can. Then I'm a 23-year-old retail worker, so. But yeah, I know that Ghost knows a ton about all the great things that oil and gas is doing to lessen their effect on the environment.
I can
Be
chime
more
in on that a bit too, if you want. I got 17 and a half years oil and gas
Yeah,
industry.
there you go. Yeah. Why not hasn't spoken up, so that's fine. Yeah, you can do that, Cody. I'll start with climate change first, and then Cody gives Cody some time to think about what he wants to say. um, so climate change. All right. The biggest thing with climate change is that what we all should try to realize is it's real. Okay, the climate does change. It changes all the time. Okay, it's a fact. Nobody can dispute that the climate changes. Ocean currents change the fucking climate. For sure, emissions change the climate. But overall, what I'm kind of getting at is that it's my personal belief, and I feel like it's a lot of the belief of a lot of people in here, that we really aren't in a climate emergency. Now, the reason I say this is, first off, because we've been lied to tons of times before, and a lot of people don't even realize it. They were telling us the world was going to end in 2000 because of climate change, right? They were fucking full of it, and they've been full of it for years. They've been saying, "Oh, catastrophic! Oh no!" And as the liberal media and the globalist agenda has taken over more and has taken hold more in this country, it's become an even bigger issue, right? People are saying, "Oh, we're gonna die. We're fucked. We have to stop the oil and gas now and switch to lithium batteries, which fucking destroy the earth."
Yeah, man.
Like, carbon, guys, is food for our plants. If we don't have carbon, we don't have any food for our fucking plants. And if we don't have our plants, then they aren't there to take all the carbon. So it's a cycle. We need carbon. I mean, honestly, when it comes to carbon, sure, getting the emissions down is great, but a huge focus on climate change should be on some of these other chemicals. These chemicals that are put in the air that destroy the ozone, for example. Also methane, which is very harmful and stays up in our atmosphere for years and years and years and years. And this isn't stuff that's being put out like crazy by oil and gas. Actually, for methane, a lot of it comes from fucking cows. So agriculture and land use, which actually makes up for about 15% of all global emissions. But basically, when it comes to climate change, in my view, the best kind of most global way to fight it is actually to go to these big emitter countries and get them to get their fucking shit together. Because China, India, all these places that have way too many people, they use old technology. They aren't efficient. They don't care. They don't have human rights standards, for fuck's sakes. Like, they're fucked. But what they realize, though, and what we're slowly helping them realize, is that by being more efficient, they're actually ending up making more money. So, with that in mind, technology has been flowing over there. We've been investing in this technology for years and developing it, and now we're selling it to global markets to have them use it and have them bring their standards up to par, right? And this is where we're going to hit the emissions hard. They have so many emissions there, and by selling them this technology, we can take away tons of those emissions. Whereas all these stupid globalists are so focused on a country like Canada that doesn't pollute at all. We have some of the best environmental standards on fucking earth, especially for oil and gas, not to mention other industries. And a big thing with climate change that concerns me is the forests, right? And not even in BC, because in BC, my opinion, we've been pretty reasonable. We haven't over deforested in years anyway. There have been times within history, yes, that maybe the lumber industry went a little too crazy, but nowadays there are stricter regulations in place that this isn't as big of a problem anymore. Not in our country. But go over to Brazil, completely different place, and they do not have nearly the same environmental standards that we do, and they have a president there right now who does not give a fuck. And so, of course, the Amazon rainforest is being completely destroyed by fires and, of course, just by deforestation from companies. And Brazil isn't doing enough about it. This rainforest is huge in preserving our climate the way that it is, in preventing something like a climate crisis from happening in the future, right? So that definitely is a concern for me. We should be doing more in that respect. And yeah, basically my point is that Canada has been an amazing global leader on this issue. We haven't got the fucking recognition for that. Instead, we're being guilted and guilted and guilted to do more and to do more when other countries around the world are like, fuck you, we'll do less and make more money. Anyway, at the end of the day, my opinion, climate change, real. Climate emergency, fucking sham. Anyway, that concludes my rant on climate change. Is there any questions that anybody has? They'd like to put them in town hall notes. That would be awesome. I'm scrolling through right now just in case there were some already. Nope. Anything that you guys would like to ask? I see somebody typing. The 4 categories of environment were climate change, industry versus environment, global environmental standing, and urban development. Actually, I might scrap global environmental standing because I think I just talked about it. But yeah. So if you guys have any global environmental standing questions, feel free to ask those now as well. Because I guess that's not a super big topic. Basically, Canada's emissions, not much. China, U.S., India, crazy. It does indeed have one of the largest boreal forests. I'm gonna keep your question, Kettle, and allow Cody to answer that after he does his bit, because that's more his topic.
I don't really have any
Again, another question
answers
that
to
Cody
this one,
can answer.
guys. It's one of those things where I have to do more research.
Cody, I think this is a hint that we should probably start on this soon. But first, I'll allow anybody that wants the open floor on climate
I am
going to
get those slaves, by the way.
Does anybody want to speak?
Just not yet.
Anybody?
Hey, I got a few things to say. I
Yeah.
agree with a lot of what you had to say, man.
Yeah.
I am 100% on board with your perspective that climate change is real. I mean, there's enough statistical data, empirical data to show, ice core samples and stuff that range back hundreds of thousands of years where we can see that the climate does change. But as far as the climate emergency, I don't believe that that is a primary concern for Canadians at this point in time, especially taking into consideration our low percentage of emissions and taking a look at, as you mentioned, the global outputs versus Canadian outputs.
Yep, 100%. And with that, if anybody else wants to speak on climate change, first off, let me know.
Hi, can I?
Go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. So yeah, I just I totally agree with you, and I just want to supplement on that. Pretty much, what the Canada actually emission they calculate to be 1.5%, just overall compared to the global. Let's give or take, let's say 2%, but we are thinking about a fraction of that, like a tenth of that is actually come from like oil sand and that kind of stuff. So, and our technology is way advanced compared to other countries, as you said. Um, Personally, I deal with I'm in oil and gas. I deal with industrial engines every day. Um, so basically, like we have really strict regulations in Alberta dealing with those emissions from those engines, uh, which is well, I mean, great contributor to the CO2. But I think come around 2020, a lot of strict regulation will come in to not just manufacture, produce of these engines, packagers, also the end users I'm talking about, the end users like Shell and Canada's, well, not in Canada anymore, but all those oil company will be in place. So I think we are on track, be honest with you, and I think we're just getting better and better.
Yeah, but you're not getting any recognition for it though. Nothing.
Well, yeah, for sure. But yeah, I just want to. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah,
Anyway.
no, 100%. And I was just piggybacking off that by saying, the media doesn't tell us all the great things that the oil and gas industry is doing to lower emissions.
For sure.
So with that, I think that's almost a perfect transition. But well, okay. Again, I'll allow anybody want to speak before we move on. Anybody want to speak? See, you're typing, Kettle. Okay, so we'll move on then. Go ahead, Universal Fractal.
Right. Yeah. No, that was that last speaker had a lot of good points there. That, like he said, rolls us perfectly into this next category. I have 17 and a half years in the oil and gas industry in Alberta, specifically here in Canada. And in my experience, I can attest 100%, and even with research that I've done, that Canada has the highest safety and environmental standards that are exercised in any country globally. While the oil and gas industry has been a direct contributing factor to ecological damage, freshwater source damage, and stuff globally, a lot of those concerns aren't actually a problem here in Canada. For instance, in the United States, where you have Flint, Michigan, and all of those areas that are affected, their freshwater sources have been contaminated by the oil and gas industry. Those are specifically related to surface casing, encasement issues. Here in Canada, we have standards that ensure that whenever a casing string is put into the ground and goes through freshwater aquifers, actually any casing whatsoever, has isolation between the piping and the ground so that there isn't contamination. There's regulatory standards for constant monitoring. There's methods for constant monitoring to ensure that there isn't any contamination. Places where these things have been done, once again, are in places in the world that do not have the industry standards that we have here in Canada. I know that I can attest to the cleanliness of the Alberta tar sands. I know that that has been a big target of the leftist media, and I believe that it is part of the globalists' move to deindustrialize and to take away a strong economic factor for Canadians, and more specifically for people here in Alberta. If you take a look at the environment prior to the tar sands development, the stuff was actually oozing out of the ground. It was oozing out of river and creek banks and contaminating natural freshwater sources. And since the tar sands have been initiated, they've actually reclaimed a lot of the land and made it viable once again and stopped the contamination from entering into the freshwater sources. Things like ground fracturing and all of that, they do have potentials, obviously, of fracturing into freshwater aquifers and certain cases and certain geological formations. But as I mentioned, here in Canada, we have standards that measure, and we use all kinds of technologies to map out the geology before any work is done, and the greatest measures of safety and environmental protection are instituted to ensure that those types of contaminations aren't taking place. I have direct experience working with ground fracturing operations, and I can attest that here in Canada,
I just wanted to hear what he had to say.
I'm not going to mention the company, but I was working for a very prominent oil field company who works globally. And we had their head Canadian safety officer come out and speak to the entire location. It was a very large operation, several wellheads on a single pad.
Sounds like somebody's asleep.
And he came out and scorned everybody about our poor safety record and environmental record in Canada, and said that we have the worst record out of any of their operations globally. And he sat there and basically made the entire room feel like, we should be guilty, that we're not doing our jobs correctly, we're not taking correct measures. And I had to step in at that point, and since we were doing fracking, I was like, "Excuse me, sir," I said, "but it would make sense that we have the worst safety and environmental standards, records, not standards, records, globally in comparison to all of your guys' outlets." I said, "But here in Canada, we're held to a higher standard than any of the places where your company works, Here in Canada, if we have even a drop of hydrocarbons hits the ground, it's a reportable instance. Whereas in the United States, when they do like fracturing operations, ground fracturing operations, they have several units tied together, in these big, huge manifolds where they're doing these pumping operations. And when they're done, they just break the pipes apart and let the stuff ooze out onto the ground and let it go. Here in Canada, that would be a huge environmental incident. You know, there would be a work shutdown. I guess what I'm trying to say is, as much as we may have the worst safety records and environmental records, it's because of the high standards that we're held to here in Canada.
It makes complete sense.
The same company that I had worked for, I'd done research where they had completely devastated ecosystems in places like Ecuador and South America, doing their oil and gas operations, right? So, I mean, the concerns are legitimate, and it is something that is a problem elsewhere in the world, but I don't believe that here in Canada it's something that should be looked at in the way that it is, especially with our tar sands. Sure, it is a dirty industry just because of the way that it has to be refined, it has to be collected. Yeah, that's a good picture. I like that. I don't know. My research has indicated that the big campaign against the tar sands is actually being funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. I don't know if anybody else in this room has had the opportunity, but if you have not, go onto YouTube.
Yeah, this is a
Search up
documentary.
Over the Barrel, I'm guessing.
Over the Barrel, yeah, you bet.
Yeah, if you
I was
guys
just
get a
reading
chance
what,
to, it's a really good
Why Not was
documentary.
saying here in Town Hall Notes.
They point out a lot of stuff that's kind of like, yeah,
Yeah, we got a couple
wait,
questions
what?
too if you want to answer those.
Let's get these going.
Cody?
Yeah, I'm just reading back here. I guess Kettle asks, how would we balance industrial
Yes, over a
development
barrel.
against environmental
Yeah.
concerns and becoming green? When I take a look at the real fundamental issues of our environmental pollution, I think it is more largely attributed to things like lithium mines, the coal mines. All of these things are bringing more environmental damage than the tar sands or any of the things that are actually in the limelight. How would we balance industrial development against environmental concerns and becoming green? I guess a good way to do that would be to look into alternative industries. Here in Alberta, or in Canada itself, it's just opening up, but I know that there's a lot of industry that hasn't had the ability to flourish, and now we're standing on the precipice of it becoming viable markets here in Canada. And I think looking at a lot of those technologies, for instance, hemp, and the several advantageous industries associated with that would be a good way.
Nuclear. Don't forget the nuclear. The huge deposit of uranium that's sitting in fucking Saskatchewan right now that hasn't been dug up.
That's where
And
my
that could be
conspiracy
like a
theorist comes
huge
out, and
replacement
I'm like,
for a
Data,
lot
stop
of the oil
talking
and
to me.
gas emissions as well as coal. We could phase
You
coal
can hear it
out
now,
completely,
Sora.
right? And then and start investing more in these nuclear technologies. Get the uranium out of the ground. Get these facilities built. Invest in it. I think this is it's a great alternative energy source to be putting our money into right now. Another one that I think is an okay one would be geothermal. There are some opportunities there, of course. Obviously, it's not as efficient, and it's really dependent on like where a geothermal plant has to be. Is really dependent on the conditions of the area that it's in. So, in terms of other stuff, solar, not very efficient, overly expensive. I personally don't think it's a good investment. Wind
Same with
power.
wind. Yeah.
Oh, wind power is terrible with efficiency. Kills fucking birds. It takes all this land. You have to open up all this land, develop all this land just to get the windmills going. They're absolutely ridiculous. They're actually, in my opinion, they're a joke. They're a complete joke. I think that's pretty much the main alternative energy sources.
Natural gas power plants are actually a viable alternative, especially with the mass natural gas deposits that are available readily here in Alberta.
Yep, true that.
It would also be something that could stimulate industry and have a low environmental impact.
And speaking of which, Feel Cool has a good question that ties into that sort of. Do we have statistics on the safety records and environmental impact of pipelines versus traditional transportation methods?
That's a really good question. I don't personally have statistics like that myself. That's something that would definitely be awesome to see and to look into and to plot it out side by side and have a look.
From your experience, like, what's your overall like view, I guess, on pipelines versus rail versus trucks versus whatever?
Well, you got to understand that a lot of the pipelines that are still in use today and are producing are antiquated technology. A lot of
What
the pipelines
colors?
and a lot of the leaks and stuff are
see a lot of
occurring
green.
in pipelines that probably haven't even been still in service. I know
think
from
there's a
personal
lot of-
experience that nowadays they are making pipelines, and now they're even lining them with liner materials.
more.
So you have like a I forget what it's called. It's not fiberglass, but it's basically like a PVC type material liner that it's pulled into the pipelines that are corrosion resistant. I mean, obviously, when you're pumping down hydrocarbons and stuff down a pipeline, you know, especially when it has hydrogen sulfide, that detrimentally degrades the integrity of the metal especially over a long
Sorry, couldn't help
period of
myself.
time. But I know from firsthand experience that now there are
Didn't mean to.
things being
I swear
put
to
into
God.
place to make the pipelines more safe. I'm not saying that, you know, it's a perfect solution. Obviously,
Oh,
whenever
jeez.
you have any energized
He's mad at
system
me.
that is transporting any type of material, there's always potential for breakage, leakage, and environmental contamination.
Yeah,
As far as the differences between the statistics on the old conventional transporting methods, I guess rail car and trucking, that's definitely something that we should probably look into and see if we can get a chart plotted.
Well, I'd like to speak on something on that note too. And here's what I've seen. Is that rail is a lot more dangerous than pipeline. Trucking, a lot more dangerous than pipeline. It's hazardous not just to the environment, but to the people that are doing it. Right? And like people that are transporting it. And of course, if you do look at statistics, now again, I'm not looking at statistics right now, but I'm pretty sure I've seen in papers and stuff that it has said that trucks and rail overall tend to have a lot more spills and a lot more environmental impact than the pipelines do. Now, let's just look at the tragedy over in Quebec, ironically, which they seem to fucking forget. We send oil by rail to Quebec, right? And so the oil, basically they were with Lac Megantic, they were transporting the oil. I forget exactly what went wrong. Maybe somebody knows and wants to chime in. But basically, there was an explosion. A lot of people were killed, and a lot of oil was spilled everywhere. So it was a complete disaster. The town was completely shook. It was a lot of the nearby surrounding stuff was destroyed. It was not pretty. And ironically, Quebec still doesn't want the pipeline, and they still want to make it so tragedies like Lac Megantic can happen again, because we're still transporting oil by rail to Quebec to this fucking day. because they can't get all of their oil from Saudi Arabia and America. They have to get some from us. So, what they should obviously be doing is getting the pipeline through. Then they don't have to worry about a horrible tragedy like that happening again. And not only that, they don't have to spend all this money buying foreign oil. Yeah, no, that's my little bit on it. Is there any more questions here?
I got
Yeah.
little dad. We're talking about industrial environment, right? Environmental
Yeah.
contamination. So, I think one that is actually largely overlooked is our agricultural industry.
100%. I was talking about that earlier. 15% for all global emissions.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about CO2 emissions. I'm talking about the effects on the environment due to the high phosphate fertilizers that are being utilized in the agricultural industry
Yeah.
in this day and age as a result of the genetically modified foods that are being grown largely in the agricultural industry, and the contaminants being, I guess, distributed throughout the freshwater systems as a result. I mean, if you take a look at a lot of the standing water, freshwater basins in any of the agricultural belts, we have a large issue of blue and green algae blooms and all kinds of things, which has been attributed to the high levels of phosphates in the agricultural fertilization.
Yeah, I mean, something I can say on that note too is with these genetically modified foods. I mean, they're an unfortunate reality. There's a lot of bad things about them, but without them, ironically, we're pretty screwed. So, I mean, basically, what I'm getting at is, like, I'll give you an example with Monsanto. If people don't know, Monsanto is one of the biggest corporations um, out there for food development, and they basically have a patent on soybeans, and anything, yeah, anything soy is theirs, right? And so basically, they have their farmers grow seeds, right? And then what happens is that these genetically modified seeds will sometimes blow over into other farmers' fields near neighboring farmers, because everybody's a neighbor in the rural areas, right? And Monsanto has a blacklist. So basically, a list of farmers that they have on that they keep track of, that they go and sue, and they sue these farmers. Well, basically, first off, what they do is they say, "Hey, farmer, would you like to start growing our seed? And if you don't, we're gonna sue you." So basically, that's how it goes. Is that the farmer has a choice: either he grows Monsanto's seed, or he fucking goes to court to fight them. Which, good luck, because they have a massive amounts of money to throw at lawyers, and they of course have massive influence within the justice system. Their lobbyists talk to some of the highest people in government on a constant basis.
If you take a look at the United States Supreme Court, a lot of the justices over the years were ex-CEOs of Monsanto.
Yeah, they sure were. They sure were. It's all interconnected. All the same people working in the government, even in the I think it's the Food and Drug Administration. A lot of people from the FDA were in Monsanto.
Now we got the merger of Monsanto and Bayer.
Oh God, that makes it even worse. But here's another interesting fact, guys: is that if we didn't have genetically modified food, then we probably wouldn't have enough food to feed most of the population of the Earth. We would have a huge food shortage and a huge food problem, because of the global food situation as it is now. Our food our food output has increased dramatically because of genetically modified foods. Without them, we would not have people would be starving. Not necessarily people in this country, but around the world, people would starve and they would die because. Yeah, so that's kind of my little bit on that. Let's see, is there any other questions?
All I gotta say is I'm not gonna live in a pot and I'm not gonna eat the bugs. That's it. Sorry, I had to.
There you go.
I refuse.
Yeah, no, GMOs is definitely a like a double-edged sword kettle is what I would call it. There's some things that it accomplishes that are great, but then there's also downsides, serious downsides because of it. So everything comes with a consequence, but it does seem that GMOs do come with a fairly big consequence, even though they have a huge benefit as well. But anyhow, I think with that, I'll open the floor up. Does anybody else want to speak on industry versus the environment? Anybody else?
Not really.
Because if not, we are going to skip global environmental standing because we've talked a lot about our global environmental standing.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot
And I
to
think
say
I
on
will
that
go
subject.
into urban development, which I do think is a very separate issue from what we've already been talking about, which is great. Urban development, first thing I'm going to say about it is
Alright, well, let's see
that
if I can get some
because
more,
of just look
We're
at
gonna make some
Alberta and
calamari.
Saskatchewan as an example. Because of all
Maybe.
these things that have been happening to our industries lately, and all the businesses that have been leaving, and all the jobs that have been lost,
I
people
need
in
a
rural
mod that
areas are
allows
having
me
it
to
really
pickle
tough.
this,
These are
because then it would be
communities that
worth
are
more.
built on industry. Their life force
Gross
is
as that is.
industry. And without industry, there's nothing there. There's no jobs for people. People aren't making any money. Drugs flow in, of course. So the people that money do fucking have goes to that, it seems. And it just completely destroys communities. And what happens? Well, not everybody stays in these communities. Some people decide, okay, well, I guess I have to leave. There's nothing here. There's nothing that I can do. If I stay here with my family, I can't provide for my family. So what do? They pack up and they move to the city. They move to the city, bringing more people to urban sites. And it seems to be one of the things that a lot of these globalists want to achieve, in my opinion, is to get people away from the rural areas and bring them into the cities. And so, with that, what has also happened is with more people coming in the cities, we've also, of course, needed to develop more houses. And to do that, we've had to acquire more land. So, Calgary is a perfect example, and I will be focusing a lot of my urban development speech on Calgary because we have a mayor, and there's some very interesting politics involved, but we have a mayor that's very pro development. And so, of course, what he does is he buys up land, has all these projects, and uses eminent domain to get land, and of course, build new communities and expand beyond the city limits. And he's already done this in several cases. What you guys have to realize is in Calgary, in these city elections, and this affects a lot of you guys in the rural, ironically, city elections, is because the developers that are in these cities in Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer, Lethbridge, these home developers, they're big guys. These guys have a lot of money, and they are all very politically involved. In fact, the developers at one point were completely against Nenshi. There was a bunch of stories in the paper about them being against Nenshi, and they funded Bill Smith's campaign against him, tried to get him elected. In order to appease a lot of these home builders, Nenshi has done exactly what they want, which is, of course, continue to buy up land and develop the city more, taking land away from people who have had this land for sometimes like decades and decades, going back before
Yeah,
like
that's the
even
thing.
1900. And they're taking it away from these people and putting fucking condos on it and selling it for millions of dollars. A perfect example that's very personal to me is the Springbank Dam. I don't know if anybody's aware, but flood mitigation has become a serious concern for our city, right? in 2013, which was a couple of years after Nenshi was elected, we had a big flood that really devastated the city, and put us economically behind it. It slowed us all down. It was a lot of effort that went into the cleanup, and it was a disaster, right? What everybody pretty much agrees on in Calgary is that we need a flood mitigation strategy to help with this issue. But there were, at the very outset of this, two clear options for the city to go. One option was to develop McLean Creek. McLean Creek is government-owned land. It's upstream, and pretty much that's all you need to know. Besides, I guess, the fact that it's cost-effective and it would have been able to be built in a reasonable amount of time. Now, so with McLean Creek, the reason a lot of people didn't like it is that it would have negatively affected areas in Mount Royal. Not overly, to be honest, but it would have negatively affected these areas in Mount Royal with a lot of rich, influential people. And so, of course, they didn't want to do that option, even though they owned land already. So instead, they decided, let's go with option B. And option B was the Springbank Dam. So the Springbank Dam is not as far upstream, so it doesn't protect as many communities. It's going to be more expensive to develop and take longer to develop. And it's also displacing a ton of landowners who have been there for, as I said, decades, who have had this passed down through their family through several generations. And so my family is the one that basically owns most of Springbank. All right, so most of the land in Springbank is owned by the Copperthorne family. That's my family, as well as the Robinsons, who are basically, we're relatives of the Copperthorns. But yeah, so we own most of the land there. Instead of going with the easy government option, they decided to go with Springbank, and they bought out our land from my great uncle, and they of course want to develop it. But they're hitting a lot of snags, and so far this is not going well for them at all. In fact, the government isn't even sure if they want to do it at this point. We do have one MP who's come out extremely against it on this issue. Miranda Rosen is her name. She's the MP for Banff, Canmore area, and she has been a firecracker this whole time, bringing up this issue whenever she can. And she's been fighting passionately on this issue for all the people in the Springbank Community Association that are going to vote for her again now that she's done this for them. But what I will say too is that with it being more upstream, McLean Creek protects Redwood Meadows. It protects Bragg Creek. It protects Sutina. So it protects all of these different communities from floods. And instead, they want to forget about all those communities, put it further downstream, and only protect Calgary. And at the same time, displace my family, take our land, and also, of course, at the same time, have serious concerns about the budget and the amount of time it's going to take. Like, it's so obvious that McLean Creek was the better option, yet they were gung-ho ahead. And you know what I think? And here's what I think, is that the reason, and you have to remember with all the stuff I've been talking about with urban development and Nenshi and the developers and the politics there, that what Nenshi really wants is to get his hands on my family's land so he can build fucking condos on it like he always does and sell it for millions. That's what these urban people want. They want to take land away from rural people. They want to bring people from rural areas into the urban centers. And it's a serious, serious concern for me. Because I think we are urban and rural, very, very, very different in almost everything you can imagine. And we're just completely uprooting people's way of life and trying to bring them into ours. That's the way I see it. And I do think it's pretty disturbing. We have to really proceed with caution when it comes to urban development. Yeah, with that, that's pretty much my spiel on urban development. I will look for questions here. If there's any questions, feel free to type them in now. If not, I'll open the floor.
Yeah, that was just frustrating to hear. I don't really have any questions for him. It's just
I am not as aware of that because I'm not in Saskatchewan, Red Dragon. But tell you what, if you maybe want to elaborate on that. So he's saying this is a regional plan that's for major protection of the wetlands and from urban encroachment. And he's wondering if we're interested in amending the SSRP. As I said, I don't know enough about it. I'd love to hear more about it from you. Maybe you can elaborate on it for me. Do you have a mic? I guess not, eh? Yeah, that's okay, man. So he's saying it's the regional plan of Alberta known as South Saskatchewan Regional Plan. Well, I mean, I would say that I'm behind the idea of the plan. I don't know exactly how far the plan goes or what the plan is, but the idea of protecting wetlands from urban encroachment, that sounds great to me. I think it's something that we really need to do. Wetlands by no means should be touched by urban development. We already don't. We already have a limited number of wetlands. They do need to be protected. It is an important conservation effort. So I agree with the premise of the plan. Again, without reading it, I can't know if I agree with how far it goes. So it's a planning document meant for how development provincially will be conducted. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, it is. You're right. Why not? Urban development is a global initiative. Part of the global agenda is to do things that incentivize people in rural areas to move to the cities, whether it be destroying the rural economy or improving the urban one. And I'll mention to anybody that's interested in what Red Dragon was just talking about there with the Southern Saskatchewan regional plan that has to do with protection of wetlands from urban encroachment. That they just put the links in there, so you guys can go ahead and look into that if you're interested in going more into that. Yeah. So since there's no other questions, I think I'm going to open up the floor. I'll allow anybody that wants to speak on urban development. Maybe they have some personal stories of their own about urban development that they would like to share. Anybody?
ooh.
Good night. Feel cool. By the way.
Urban development. No. Yeah, no.
All right. So with that, I think suppose I will.
Wish I was more helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry.
All right. Well, looks like I didn't manage to talk to how long I was hoping to till 9, obviously. But I guess it figures. We only had one issue topic to cover tonight. So, one thing that I was maybe going to throw out there that I would like to hear about when it comes to the environment is more about maybe the forestry industry. I don't know a lot about the forestry industry.
Oh.
Obviously, they do have an impact on the environment. Maybe you could even speak to some of their more economical struggles and whatnot, especially with trade in the U.S. and all that. I'd be interested to hear about that. But yeah, anybody want to speak on forestry? If anybody has maybe a connection to it in BC or something, because I'm not going to speak on it just because I don't know enough about it. But figure I'd throw that out there as a good topic.
Well, if I can ever get Elwyn. I mean, she doesn't have, like, direct contact, but...
Okay, so I'm gonna
Hi,
figure that
Caligula!
there's probably nobody from forestry in here. That's okay. I figured not. One thing I do know, people that I do know are in here, is farmers. I know there's some farmers in here. I know there's some people involved in agriculture. I'd like to hear from you guys. Maybe some things about agriculture and whatever you can really think of that's relevant to the environment, I suppose. Anybody want to speak on that, maybe? Because, again, I know there's some farmers in here, just saying. I know you guys haven't had a great harvesting season this year. My family certainly hasn't.
Last 3-4 years, I think, have been trying on a lot of farmers.
Yeah, no, this year was particularly bad, though. It was worse. It was worse than previous years.
Yeah, that wet rain was pretty nasty. For a lot of people.
Well,
Yeah, he's probably reading our chat in the Discord, guys, so you just gotta bear with him. It's just to make sure people aren't over-talking each other.
stuff. So I think with that, then, it's 8:30, guys. I think we'll essentially conclude the town hall here. I know it did end a little bit early. But yeah, no, I think that was a great discussion. We're going to open up free discussion now. You don't have to go anywhere. Feel free to stick around, guys. We can talk about whatever we want. Maybe even talk about maybe some of the stuff that was left over from the town hall that you wanted to talk about, etc. Right? Again, any questions, feel free, shoot them now over the voice chat. You can PM me, whatever it is. Sorry that Ghost and a lot of the other people weren't able to make it tonight.
Jeez, look
But
at
I
this.
hope that we all learned a lot. I felt like I learned a lot from
I
Cody
cannot be
there.
stopped!
So I want to personally thank Cody for his contribution today on the oil and gas. SRA, aka Oni, too.
Worries.
All the oil and gas guys.
Swinging it, man.
And then over here.
Well, you guys are all very knowledgeable. As I said, I learned
here.
a lot, so that's good. One of the biggest takeaways will be the I love that. The environmental record. Because of how high the standards are, is terrible. Makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. He didn't know what to say when I brought that up. He changed the subject pretty quick, we'll put it that way.
I bet he did. It's like, alright, get back to work.
Yeah.
Oh. They get really mad when you interrupt them when they're in the middle of doing stuff. Alright, I'm gonna go drop off some stuff, and then I'm gonna enter their... Well, I am in their Discord anyway, but I'm just gonna...
But yeah, just so you guys are curious, I'm gonna smoke a bowl now. This whole time I've been wanting to smoke weed, and there was like not enough of a break time in between there, so...
No worries, you did great. You did fine.
Yeah. I get sick of hearing myself talking, and I wish that there were more people here tonight that helped me out with the speaking parts, but that's okay.
It's one of those things, like, because of my daytime stream, like, I'm kind of doing a temporary daytime for another fellow, but it's half of it is like just general politics, sometimes it's entertainment, so it's like I'm trying to throw in as much Canadian stuff as possible, but like honestly it's the same stuff. It's so difficult to find anything up here, even with others like search engines. That's just not the same repetitive stuff. But in terms of the forestry stuff, I can't guarantee this one, but I do know a girl who's got family who used to do lumber up in northern BC. So she said that she's just going to talk to them and see if they've got any information that they can share with her. So, like, if later down the road she does that, then, you know, I'll pass that along to you guys. But
Sure.
it's just like there's so much stuff to look into, and it's not that I mind doing it, it's just I don't spend too much time on it, because the government pages are just a pain in the ass.
Oh, 100%. Nobody wants to read that.
You know,
you want to have somebody like a reporter read it and then fucking tell you what they said.
you know, and I mean, that's the thing that sucks. It's like, I'd rather read it myself, but at the same time, like, they make it so disorganized in a way that
it's intentionally difficult to get information.
they do. It's so frustrating, and I know everyone. I know everyone here must feel that way too, because everyone's like doing the same thing. But you know, you end up.
Cody can touch on that. Cody, how hard has it been for you to get the information that you've gotten your hands on?
Oh man, sometimes it's I wouldn't even describe it as pulling teeth. That would be a definite understatement. For simple things that are supposed to be publicly accessible by our government institutions is extremely hard to get your hands on this day and age, and increasingly so as time goes.
Yeah, it's like one of those things, like, half the time I end up going to U.S. politics just for a breath of fresh air, because, like, theirs at least is as crazy as ours most of the time. It's just that nobody knows ours. That's just flat out. Nobody seems to know ours, so...
I mean, the corruption in the U.S. is pretty fucking blatant, is what I would say.
Yes.
Everybody knows what's going on, it seems, even though nobody can do anything to stop it.
Well, it's like I've been saying for a while. It's like the you know, Epstein didn't kill himself. I mean, like, it's dead as far as I can tell. Like, it might as well have like suicided itself 10 times already. But I'll keep posting them just because it's so obvious. It's so obvious what happened.
You know what's funny? Derek Fildebrandt, FCP, because we were talking about him earlier. He posted that fucking today about Epstein killing himself, not killing himself.
It's just so obvious. I don't know. And everyone on that list and their excuses, like Prince Andrew, like, have you seen their response to that?
Yeah, that was just ridiculous. Obviously he did it. Obviously.
You know, like, he knew full well what was going on. And even and just the fact that he did, even if he didn't engage, which I'm pretty sure he probably did, the fact that you knew about it and you didn't say anything means that you're still a part of it, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. And the media has been obviously paid big bucks to forget about it. So they made it a huge thing for like one news cycle, and then it was killed.
Sorry to bring up like other topic. It's just one of those things where, like, these are the same people that, you know, probably somewhere their fingers are in our politics too. It's just, you know, somewhere.
They are.
They're
they
just
are. That's the thing. 100%. The Americans have been basically screwing with our elections, and they've screwed with our resources. They've screwed with our economy. They've probably done more. A lot more damage than most have.
Utilized our banking industry to launder countless amounts of black market dollars, from what I've...
Mm-hmm. Where do you think all the guns come from, too?
yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see these released indictments and the purported connections to certain Canadian foundations.
Yeah, that would be interesting to do. I would imagine, though, like, you gotta be really careful with that, because right now they're in election time, so, you know, that whole suicided thing isn't a joke. I mean, it is, but it isn't. Thank God we're not there.
I mean, I do think that Trump's gonna get probably reelected. Not just because of American sentiment that I've seen, but because of gerrymandering that's been going on. Like, now that they've gerrymandered it, they've pretty much fucking guaranteed that he's gonna.
At least with him, like, you know, even if you hate the guy, at least with him, you know kind of what you've got, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree.
You know,
I don't like the guy. I think he has zero social and he's a douchebag. But I do think he's a businessman and he knows how to run an economy.
he does. And I mean, you know what you've got with him. I mean, yes, he's kind of a bit of a child. Yes, he's definitely, he's always been a narcissist.
He's a narcissist.
He's always been a narcissist. But you know where you stand with him. Whereas with everybody else, you know somebody's got their fingers in their pockets. At this point, that's just been made really clear the last, you know.
Yeah, and the thing about Trump is, yeah, he cares more about himself than any special interests. So there you go.
But you know what? When you know that, you can still work with the guy. As long as you know that, there's ways around it. Like, I mean, I'm sorry to point it out, but Kanye West and Kim Kardashian are an example of that. You know, like, even if you don't like them either, it's just like she had a family member that was in jail. She wanted them out. Guess what happened?
They're out.
They're out. You know, and that's
Trump wanted that Arizona guy. Who was he? Some fucking like guy that basically put all these minorities in jail. The sheriff. Yeah. He like documented times where he was basically just being completely blatantly discriminatory, and Trump pardoned him.
So, just so you have forewarning, when it comes to my streams, there's certain people that appear that I generally scream their names. Well, at least not scream, but yell it out rather loud. I'm not going to do it right now because you guys don't. I'm probably not like, no yelling. But if I suddenly mute, that's what that's about.
Okay, yeah, no worries. It's all good. But yeah, overall, I think it was a great down hall, guys. Huh, awesome. I'm gonna smoke some weed, so feel free to keep talking.
Now that's another one that's kind of tanked up here. Like, don't get me wrong, I appreciate it, but at the same time, it's not been handled very well.
What has?
The pot and how it's been.
Pod legalized. It's been awful. It's been absolutely awful.
You know, like, there's nowhere in Canada where you can say that they've done it right. Like, the only real difference between us and Ontario is probably just there's more Ontarians, so just by basis of numbers.
So, with all the regulations on the industry right now, there's not a lot of things that businesses can do to compete with the black market, and so the black market still has a significant share of the market.
Yeah.
I purchased my weed off the black market, and the reason is because these guys come to my fucking door. They come on time. They come with a ton of weed to choose from, as many strains as I could think of. Indica, sativa, hybrid, never gypped you. They come, you buy your weed, you leave.
Yeah.
You smoke your weed. That's all. That's it. It's great. There's no taxes. I don't have to leave my fucking house. Like, and I know that these guys have great shit, and they always have had great shit. And I don't believe that I'm ever going to get anything bad from them. Their quality, people know them. Everybody's never had any problem with them. So I don't see how the legal market is supposed to fucking compete with that. It can't. And not only that, the legal market has had huge supply issues. There have been times where basically the pot shop has nothing to sell because the supply is not there. They haven't figured it out yet from a fundamental
absolutely
standpoint.
Right. I actually have a lot of experience in that. I was one of my family members was looking at starting up a right from the ground, you know, grow, extraction, retail, the whole nines.
Yeah.
So I got right into that legislation and understood it thoroughly. And on a more fundamental level, I think one of the major issues with the way that the cannabis industry is being handled, in my personal opinion, aside from all of the monetary issues and the legislative restrictions and stuff like that, I think that the way, I don't know if you guys have looked into the sanitization of the product and the industry standards for the moisture contents, mandatory pasteurization, which is basically irradiating the product. Just like when we import foods from other countries and it has to go through the radiation screening to kill molds and funguses, spores, and those kinds of things, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So right there, the product's being radiated, which is a major difference from the illicit market, obviously. And then in the beginning, they had moisture content regulations. I think it was like 0.4% moisture content or something like that. I can't remember exactly. It's been months since I've read it, but at those levels, they were actually at levels where a lot of the beneficial compounds within the cannabis flashed off, like a lot of the flavonoids and terpenes flash off at a different moisture content. So the end product, which is supposed to be beneficial, and moreover than just a social means, but as a medicinal means as well, a lot of that is being destroyed because of the regulatory requirements.
Yeah, it's been very stunted so far. I mean, people who have invested in the cannabis industry who thought it was gonna be a get rich quick scheme for them, have now found out not so much.
Pretty much. And I mean, the stuff that you are getting, like if you are going into the store, half the time the quality isn't there because the people packaging it don't seem to know what they're doing. Even to like the level of like, you mean people don't know how to weigh it out?
What?
Yeah. Yeah, literally I've bought stuff before. So one of the things I do to make it cheaper is I'll just buy a joint and then just rework it into a pipe. So the last time I went, I got this joint, and I was like, you know what, I got a little bit of a deal, so I got 3 out of it. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna smoke this one. I haven't smoked an actual joint in a while. And I go to start smoking it, and I'm like, wait a minute, this thing is burning really weird. And so I'm like, okay, well, it's not rolled very well. Like, it's, some people just don't roll. Like, sometimes it just doesn't burn evenly, and so I start to take it apart.
It's called canoeing. Yeah.
And there's a full-on stem in it.
Oh no.
And I'm sitting here like, okay, so like, I mean, I went back to the store and I was like, listen, I realize you guys don't do this. Like, you just sell it. They distribute it to you. But have you had this happen? Because they all buy the pot there. It's one thing when you work there and you're like, okay, well, I get it here. I don't doubt they get a discount too. And they're like, yeah, we've had that happen quite often. Like, you go to buy like an expensive product and you can't get more than like 7 grams unless you just buy more of it, And so sometimes you open the package and like there's so much stem in it that you're just like, okay, first of all, nobody does that.
No.
I wouldn't purchase that from a guy on the street. I would go and find someone else, and that's scary. For a legal pot, that's not what you're looking for.
Not at all.
So yeah, that was my last experience with that. I was like, ooh, okay.
I don't know why they didn't like put it in liquor stores either. Like, you may as well.
Well, that or at the very least the like smoke shops. The tobacco shops are like, okay, well we kind of already have half the stuff for this anyway.
Yeah.
And they do. And a lot of them sell like the paraphernalia for pot anyway too. So
Yeah, but the trouble is all the zoning laws and all the hoops that you have to jump through to get the permit that you need. It's absolutely ridiculous. They need to make the process simpler.
Yeah.
And more streamlined so businesses can actually start selling pot. Like, come on.
It's not that hard. It's one of those things where, you know, when we first got the turd in the first time, I was hoping at the very least with the pot maybe we could stabilize some of it. I was like, nope, you couldn't even do that one.
The only benefit that I've seen from local pot being like legalized is that now I don't have to worry about getting busted for possession or shit like that. Not that cops gave a fuck anyway. They always used to just like let me go off with a warning every time. So
Yeah, I've never had that happen. I'm lucky that way. But I also didn't really start smoking pot until I was much older. So I think the paranoia.
I started like 15.
Yeah, I was 22. I was like, well, at least my brain's developed. I should be fine. And, you know, came to the conclusion that drinking wasn't for me. So I was like, well, everybody has to have a poison, okay? Everybody has to have something to detox their day from. I was like, that one works. Okay, I'll pick that one.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, definitely better than alcohol, in my opinion. I don't even drink much anymore myself. I drink expensive beer. That's what I drink. And so I don't drink much of it, because it's expensive.
Well, that's the way to go about it. I mean, that's kind of what I was taught as a kid. It's like, you know, and obviously you can't afford expensive things all the time, but if you do, you treat yourself, but you make it last for a long time. It's just, you have to know how to do that. And thank God my mom's from, like, you know, she's European, like, first generation. My dad's, like, 8th generation Canadian. So.
Oh, yeah.
So I got a little bit of both worlds. So it was like meat and potatoes on a plate. My mom was like, we can advance from that. You don't have to boil the potatoes all the time.
There you go. Yeah, I'm excited for the holidays. It's gonna be good. Birthday's actually in December too. So.
You know, it's different for everyone, Sora. Like, I don't judge people for not doing it, you know? It's like people who don't like smoke. Like, I am a cigarette smoker, too. But, with the pot, I'm probably gonna quit the cigarettes. To be real. Just because I get more from the pot than I do from the cigarettes. And I mean, with the pot, I can probably wean that down to, like, a certain period of the night where I have a little bit. You know, so I'm not necessarily quitting, but I'm cutting down on something that's bad for me. If I was really smart, I would just grow my own pot, but I just can't afford that here because the carbon tax.
I fucking hate cigarettes, honestly. I like just smoking them on their own doesn't do much for me. But what I've gotten into though is when you mix it with pot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's where it gets me. And I'm like, oh, this actually has a fucking use now.
Well, it stabilizes the burn, is what it does. But some people are like, evil, you mixed my pot.
I believe it's most likely the person in judgment. Sorry, interrupt. Guys, put it this way: I don't smoke or do drugs or anything like that. But it's most likely a personal choice and personal responsibility. It's like after you're older, 18 years old, okay, do knock yourself up, whatever you want it to be. But you have to be responsible about whatever you put yourself into. That's pretty much it. And the problem is sometimes some people just get too high or they don't control themselves, and that's the problem.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, that's for everything. It's the same with booze, you know. Honestly, I prefer it at home. You know, this is mostly just like, okay, well, I have a little bit when I stream. You know, maybe I'll play a little bit of a game. But I don't do it all the time.
Yeah,
it's
it's like kind of small habit, you know. In terms
Yeah.
of, for instance, this way everybody got in terms of like say I play sometimes video games. I play like a couple hours every day, only because I want something different.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's kind of the same thing with pot or drinking or alcohol.
Yeah.
Even sometimes we just knock ourselves inside a box, inside, okay, we figured out okay, this is the mission. Okay, I'm stuck in my mission. And from there, let's see what happens. Try to live life. That's it.
The other thing too is like I think the other thing for me with the pot is mostly just because it was illegal for such a long time that having a pot, like I have one really close by to me, so it's kind of like putting a fat kid right next to a really cheap candy store.
Yep.
You
There
know,
you go.
so I mean, I'm gonna work out of that. Like I have to work around that. Like, I have to treat it like, okay, I'm on a diet, and I am on a diet, so I am treating it the same way.
There you go.
I'm gonna diet. Oh boy, so you're most likely to say yourself, you're too fat to be woman.
No, 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 that's not it. It's just it's really just about making myself more healthy, because like I run towards diabetes. So it's just I want to cut down to a point where I'm at least healthier. But it's not that difficult at this time of year. It's actually, as long as you can dress up enough, if you go walking in the snow, it's just shitty enough that you get more exercise, so.
No, you got the problem I don't got. What about the problem I got so far is like I lose a lot of weight and I don't tend to eat a lot, so that's the problem I got. So it's a good compliment in one way. It's like I don't go higher than 140 pounds even at 33 years old. So it's like a lot of times a lot of people say, oh, what do you do for your weight? You look good. I say, well, you got a problem eating. You got a problem eating. I don't got that problem.
Good night, why not?
No. That's it. That's a way to control ourselves. But also depends the circumstances, living life, or anything in between, That's how it goes.
Well, it's a lot of it's just retraining myself. It's one of those things as a kid that you might fall into when you move out of home. And I ran into that as that independent girl living by herself after home. So when you're living at home with your parents, they're just like, you can have a treat every once in a while, but you should kind of either earn it or, it's a special thing. And then you move out of home and it's like, well, nobody can stop you from buying the treats, right?
Nope.
Yeah, the problem with me is like put this way, my family used to give me lot of food. And I most likely say, okay, every time they prepare something, yeah, I most likely I eat. And anytime when I move out the house, I say, okay, time myself to start cooking. I feel lazy about it. So what am I to travel all around? So it's like, what the heck? What the heck? When I realize even, I went to a doctor, say, you lose weight, you're underweight. I say, how come I'm underweight? I eat whenever I want to eat. Yes, but you don't eat enough. I say, okay, so I'm underweight. So what can I do about it? He says something like this. Eat more. I say, okay. I just eat what I want. Well, that's it. That's the problem. It's a hard habit.
I try to do 3 meals a day, but I can only end up doing 2, really.
Mm-hmm.
My day's busy.
It's not
Today I
so.
was running around. Fuck.
It's not so much that. It's just I have a lack of interest in food half the time. It's not that I don't like food, because I'm a good cook. I actually. I am when I joke about being a sandwich maker, I'm just saying that I've worked in food industry, but it's
Put it
just
this way, at least you support all the winters though, because even winters, most likely, let's say you call yourself a little bit froggy, but you most likely don't get sick easily. And that's even in sandwiches, so it's kind of eating every good meal every day. As persons as me, I must like to eat anything I want, but I don't know what to eat or what to eat. So it's like a routine to me. It's not like I grew up and live life, pay bills, work and try and pay bills. That's kind of hard. I guess even in terms of that, it's like sometimes even put it this way. I guess the circumstances happen is like thinking, okay, what to do next besides work and try to live life and I try to maintain pay bills. That's there's something else.
It's also
Some
it's also a very food industry thing. Like I think it's across the board right now. Like I find that a lot of people don't really go home and cook. Not that they can't. It's just that they don't. Um, but food industry is kind of known for that. It's either you cook all the time when you're at home, or you just eat out of the restaurant that you work at. Because
Exactly.
most
Yeah, like I did.
because most places you can just make your food there, or someone else will make it for you or something.
the thing is like the problem is we grow up on that era. We too independent, right? The problem is even with technology and everything, even as a millennial, we just think, okay, whatever, live life, but I feel lazy or I don't feel cooking for myself. Even I like cooking. I don't, I cook good and everything, but I tell you, cost me to say, for what I want to cook myself. I just want to eat in the restaurant or eat a little bit and leave it go. That's the problem. That's the way to growing up, and what realize that is we all enough, to figure out what we want.
Well, and even with these the new technology and the new industries that have sprouted in the food industry, like Skip the Dishes and Uber Eats and other things like that, have made it even easier for people to stay home and get the fucking food from the restaurant, and that's what they've done.
Mhm.
Not everybody, people that can't afford it, they still go to the fucking grocery store and make food, but anybody that can usually, yeah, at least dips into that. Even we do here. I mean, we don't make a ton of money, but we'll still get skip the dishes every once in a while just so we don't have to fucking cook.
It's just it's usually just a treat, in that sense. Just yeah, lately for me, food and me is just like everything tastes the same. Like that. And I can't
I guess
afford real
because
food, so, like meat. I had that discussion with my mom the last time we had a T-bone steak. Because they've been on a permanent diet. And now it's like you look at the prices on it and it's just like it's not unreasonable, but it kind of is.
I'm glad I don't have that problem being vegetarian.
no, no, I cannot eat without meat. Though. It's like I feel like to me, eating all the time, it's like a living in slavery. And myself, it's like I need energy. That's the thing, guys. I need energy.
I don't blame you for being vegetarian or anything like that. I actually don't mind vegetarian food. It's just the vegans, because the vegans are more like a cult, and so I like to take the piss out of them just out of general principle. Because like I support your choice to do whatever the hell you want with your own body, but uh, doesn't work for everybody. you know.
Yeah,
To me, it's not if you're like I mean
You know what I'm saying?
I don't well no I don't like the characterization of vegans as all being a cult. I don't think that's true at all. I do think
yeah.
that certain vegans and certain vegetarians are fucking crazy. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'll give you an example. There was a vegetarian woman who, this was in the news. She literally called the bylaw on her neighbor because he constantly would have cookouts in his backyard with friends and family,
hmm
and the fumes from that would go over into what she would smell. She's the next door neighbor, right?
hmm
And she fucking complained about the meat, which I think that is absolutely retarded. So now you've taken your vegetarianism and you're trying to impose your values on other people. That's where it's wrong. And yeah, sure, you're probably right,
hmm
Jen. On a statistical standpoint, vegans are going to be more like that than vegetarians. That's probably true. But
Yeah, I shouldn't generalize. You're not wrong. It's
That's
just
one thing.
I think the thing is I used to follow a lot. Well, I didn't follow them because I agreed with them. I followed them because they were like several layers of kooky. But if you ever want to look up interesting ones, look up like Vegan Gains and Freely and her
yeah,
You're like my
ex.
sister,
yeah. So
You're like my
there
sister.
are those vegans that look at it like a social
Yeah,
movement,
yeah,
and those are the vegans that are nuts.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
then vegetarians out there that just don't want to eat meat and they
You're
don't
like my
care what you
sister.
do.
You're like my sister. You're like the new gen. My sister is like a 26, 20. Hold on. Yeah, it's like 27 right now. And she's like yourself. She doesn't eat meat.
Mhm.
Just cook everything, but cook even for his boyfriend and everything. And that she's fine with it. But sometimes I tell myself, I can live without it. It's like she began vegan for almost last 6 years. And yeah, it's her choice. Even her the food, she tends to compare a lot about the food and everything. So it's like she buys expensive food every time. So it's like wow, wow, it's pricey, but she buys it.
Well, there's the other
I,
side of the coin too. That I agree with the cray part though. Is the I don't know what the official title. I'm not sure if they call themselves the Carnage guys or something, like the meat eater version of it, where they just go into eating raw meat, and you're just sitting there like, we've gone through this thing about the eye teeth and the molars and several thousands of years of evolution.
I guess what the people be adopt over the last decade is like adapt themselves to eat normal in terms of say, okay, I can eat everything I wanted. Even the agenda back in the day, they say, well, you cannot take milk, and now we accept milk. That's the thing. It's like, nah. I realize you are not over the all the time I've been living. Eat whatever you wanna eat. If you wanna cook something, just most likely you feel more like cooking with somebody than cooking for yourself. That's the reality. That's reality.
I'll tell you guys the end of that story too. By the way, that neighbor that got the bylaw cops called on,
Yeah.
he had a big cookout, huge cookout, and he advertised it through the media,
Yeah.
and then said everybody can come down.
Didn't they set up like a bunch of
Big party
barbecues all
though.
down the block or
They
something?
set up
Like,
like a bunch of barbecues, and it like went ham. This lady lost her fucking shit. It was
yeah,
great. She deserved it. But
yeah.
hey, here's the other thing too.
Hmm.
I do. I can't completely disagree with some of these people in the vegan vegetarian social movements either. And again, I'm not an extreme activist or whatever. I kind of like am reserved to allow people to make their own choices.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I mean, there's
but
there's some stuff that you guys have said that has changed my mind. Like, I mean, like I said,
well,
I'm
the
not
agri-
gonna,
we
you
were
know,
talking about the agricultural
yeah.
industry and it's damaging effect on the environment and how much negative effects it's had and all the development and just the having the cows and all these other animals and the
Well, I
livestock.
can talk about that though. The thing is, most people think like we have to protect the environment, right? In terms of
Hmm.
like and
Well,
that's
not
like
just
I
that,
said,
they
that
treat the animals
or
like fucking
they're
shit.
treating the animals. I tell you, they're treating the animals in Canada and United States. They're actually very high. They're kind of good. As in,
Mm,
like,
May
it's
in,
I?
like
in
a
free
higher high.
range, yeah, in free range institutions, you're completely right.
Yeah,
Not
it's
But I'm,
not
I'm
every
put
talking.
farmer
What about
takes
the
care of
factory
animals like
farms?
shit.
What about the factory
this way.
farms, man?
The
Hmm.
thing is like even you can prove it yourself. Take a taste
Yeah, I
from the
can.
like in the natural and the official. It's like we
I
make
could find videos of factory farms right now.
yeah, but I can tell you there are things. Even for instance, I don't know if you've been traveling, but I travel. I tried to travel even outside the country, outside Canada, and I realized something. Even their fruits and everything, because we import it from other countries with actually are tropical countries, because we got a crazy climate crisis in this place because we live in a North Pole and most likely the temperatures are always extreme. Fruits are bigger in tropical countries. They are bigger.
Hmm.
And the most likely what we receive in Canada, we import a lot of them into Canada. But in some extent to say, why don't make it as a high mature form? Because, for instance, check it out, the oranges. The oranges are always small. You go to California, they are big though. They're fucking big. It's like,
So
why is
Mhm.
that? Because the terms of moving shipment to Canada is more expensive and pretty much with taxes on bullshit, make it difficult. And plus, even adding the conflicts on governments, we don't got even free trade. That's even the problem with the chronic capitalism in terms of
I would like to say something about your comment there on large farms that sell to factories and mistreating animals. I used to work for a huge farm in southern Alberta. I've been a farmhand for quite a few years, and I have never seen anybody who I have worked with, even ones that sell. Like one farm that we worked on, all of our cows went to Lakeside Packers, which is outside of Brook. Uh, Nobody, no one ever did anything to those cows that would be, you know, I have never treated food any less than I treat my dog. And no one else that I've worked with, my employers have ever shown any disrespect for their life. It's essentially it's their livelihood. Why, if you own a construction company, are you gonna beat the shit out of your bobcat? No, that's what makes you money. Why would you mistreat it like that?
Well, and one of
PETA goes and seeks out the one bad apple and claims that it's everybody. And they do these scare tactics, and it's not it's the extreme minority, and by far not the majority. Just had
that's
to
fair.
put that.
And I know in Canada the regulatory standards are actually a lot better than in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably
Very
much bigger problems in the U.S. than Canada. And you're right, yeah. A lot of these factory farms that have been put out there, they're people that are breaking the law.
Yeah.
They're actually like breaking the law by the conditions they're putting animals in.
In a group of farmers, they would be looked down upon by their peers.
Yeah.
They would, if Farmer Joe knew that Farmer Bob was doing this shit, Farmer Bob probably wouldn't be making much money because Farmer Joe would see to it that his name was ruined, everything was ruined. He'd pretty much have to go and sell his farm.
I completely agree to
Like,
that.
people take this abuse shit quite seriously. Go to any 4-H club. All of those kids are kids who are growing up on a farm. 4-H teaches them responsibility and empathy for their future livelihood. I'm not saying every 4-H kid is a farmer's kid, because there's a lot that, just somebody who has 15 acres will get their kid a cow a kid can do the cow 4-H until the cow's old enough for slaughter, But there are a lot of farmers' kids in 4-H.
Yeah, there's this kettle just dropped a story right now about a farm that was abusing dairy cows.
Yeah,
Of course,
even
put it in
I-
jail.
What were they actually doing?
uh,
I got a
I've
jet,
been in
folks.
the-
Thanks
the
everyone
dairy
for
farm.
your time.
Yep,
Nice.
take her easy, Cody. Thanks
Have a
again,
good
man.
night.
Oh, okay.
You bet.
Yeah, I got to shut down my stream pretty soon, but like, take your time finishing up with what you're saying, because it's interesting. Like, I always kind of support our farmers, just as I've been in Calgary my whole life, and 8th generation on my dad's side. His dad, not his dad, his grandfather did that kind of stuff, so for us it's just kind of like we moved out of that, we moved into the city, the heart's still kind of there. I remember going out to the ranches as a kid, and you got to see the animals and stuff. Like, they've always been okay out here. I just try to do my research, when it comes to what I'm buying, and I've cut down on the meat in general. It's not to do with like the farmers. It's just more like, when you really look at the diet and what's better for you, and
yeah, it's
overall,
expensive too. Don't think about that one.
I definitely go for the price, though. It's like, for instance, there are times I say I want to buy a good slice of meat. I don't want to eat it all in once.
Mhm.
But the problem is, even the prices still high. Carbon tax,
Mhm.
sales tax, provincial tax, all bullshit taxes. So I tell myself, well, I cannot buy the largest meat I would like to buy. It lasts me at least 2 months.
Mhm.
I just have to buy even half of the half to last me just half a month. It's quite dying. That's it. Put it this way, even living in Canada is quite pricey. All the even provinces. Some provinces are worse than others.
Even depends where you get your stuff from. Even sometimes, I can tell you, even for cherries and spring, they're kind of priceless. Like the price is kind of $3, $2. If you go to the farms where the cherries, oh yeah, you can get a big bag for only $3. $3. But that's the thing. That's the freaking plan we got so far in terms of. It's because farmers they care about the land. It's like it's the ownership. It's to let them on land. They do good for the land. It's like the Indians. The Indians they just wanna be able to know how to use the resources in terms of the creating jobs or whatever. They just wanna be independent themselves. They don't wanna thinking what government do for me don't do. They just wanna be independent. They just wanna work hard. They just always be like that. That's everybody. Even when you got something, you protect it. You know, it's like you protecting your dog or your cat or your animal.
One thing I'm just gonna mention is if you could avoid using the term you just used for First Nations, not trying to be like, a politically correct
Well,
asshole here, but we are streaming and
yeah,
it's yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
please
yeah, yeah.
just try to
Sorry,
avoid
sorry.
that.
It's good that
you
you're
got
mentioning
to
it because
made it though.
I'm used to gaming,
No,
so
I understand. Like it happens, people slip up. It's not a big deal. It's just let's
you
just
you, you
not
say
do it
that, but
again.
I had a guy from Quebec on my stream, and you know what? How he describes the NDP leader, I
I'm
cannot repeat
sorry.
on here.
Well, sorry a bit to be too expressive, like that's why
No, you're
that's something
fine.
what I cannot help at all. I cannot
You're
Oh,
help
I
it.
know.
fine.
And I love what you're expressing. It's just just the
Yeah.
terminology is the only thing.
There's nothing wrong with you. There's only things wrong with people who want to censor us, and
Oh yes, I
I'm not
forgot
messed.
about the censor though. It's like we live in an era where actually they try to censor the internet or allow even divided people or try to work like rabbits. We all work like rabbits, and you guys just have to do what they tell you to do.
So I'm gonna
Yeah, I
tell you
forgot about.
something really, really funny as I shut down my channel. But just to remind YouTube that YouTube also allowed me to name my channel Snow Mexican, and my avatar is 100% Mike from Canmore, and they said okay to that.
Oh,
I'm Mike from Canmore.
I'm Mike from Canmore,
I miss him.
and I
miss
went
him.
with Snow Mexican
I think
because
oh,
I think soon YouTube's gonna wise up, especially if you're
oh,
streaming
probably.
our stuff.
Probably. I'm just
I
taking advantage of it while I'm still tiny here, and I'm letting you guys have the same. And like I said, it's just you get out what it is that you want to say, and at least the other side gets to hear your points. Um, and at the same time, though, it's the same with the media. You can't trust the media. You can't trust that they're not going to spin things that are out of whack. Nobody's saying anything in here that's violent or bad. We're just wanting to improve our lives.
yeah, everybody wants that, Even put it this way,
Yeah.
there are things in Canada even probably match. We live in an area sensory, and a lot of problems is like it's not because people are not talking; they don't care about whatever everybody does. But problem is people are be dividing themselves,
Mhm.
isolate themselves, and
Mhm.
sometimes we need to share their thoughts to people who want to talk like we think. That's the thing. The allies, they're is the ones who most likely nobody listen to it. Or sometimes we lose friends because we did something wrong, or what we say we believe in something different. I did lose a lot of friends over years because of that, and they didn't believe the terms I believe in because a lot of times they say, you know what, I believe we have to censor everybody to be able to live their lives. I say, how is that possible? So that breaks me apart.
Yeah, no, and I get it. And like with the move ties in with the movement well too. There's a lot of different viewpoints here.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of people that have different ideas on how we should separate, what route we should take.
If
Um,
I don't know you guys hear about this, I probably spell it for you because hurt me over the last 7 years. I get it over after. You familiar with the Canadian myth?
the
Canada
Canadians.
is not. Yeah, Canada is not a country.
as the United States. Canada is a corporation outside the Canada. It's not even a
Oh, I
country
know.
anymore.
It's a corporation. I understand that.
And even for instance, you're familiar, the government of Quebec, or what is called the National Assembly, they don't got a freedom of speech, and they got even a lot of laws against the freedom of speech in terms of the own ruling into Quebec.
Well, I'm not 100% familiar with that. I do know, obviously, that in like 1867, I think it was, they had
Nope,
their
they still live in today. Tell you, you're talking to a guy from Montreal. Since
oh, I
the
figured.
the last quarter century, sadly enough, from the Anglophone in Quebec, they be abolished almost not abolished, they be silenced a lot. It's not because the French from Canada, they are very loyalist to the Canadian people. But the French from France, they came with a plan to try to take over Canada from periodically through the eras and try to divide this country to create conflict in between the countries that create censoring. And they got a good plan. The plan is been working so far in terms of censoring the Canadian people, in terms of what it means to be Canadian, in terms of let's talk about constitution reform. What about those? They don't even talk about it because they know the elites, they don't like that. The state of Alberta is funded by Houston in terms of against into pipelines. Quebec is most likely controlled by New York State. So most likely all the cards are in play. That's why they maintain the status quo. And that's what we never even be able to reform Canada the way we want it. Cost me time to understand that, and cost me even crying because a lot of things I used to believe in Canada and they're at fault. And hurts me in terms of a lot of people who thinking a lot of times how to live lives. Even I live in the city, Montreal. You probably don't know, but Montreal got, like I said, 2 provincial taxes, sales taxes, provincially. They got a federal tax, they got a city tax, they got carbon tax, cap and trade tax, they got income tax, and it's not even the same system as Alberta or Saskatchewan. In terms like in Saskatchewan and Alberta, you're not forced to pay tax. In Quebec, you're forced by the National Assembly or the Corporation of Quebec inside Canada. There's like a nano corporation with actually the players from all over the country play with the tax dollars to try to figure out to maintain a corporations because they don't like free trade, they don't like free harmony, or even to be part like the states. The francophones, I tell you, they understand the issues. The problem is even the elites get their way. They can't even probably, I got a theory, they fraud even the election to most likely dismiss the People's Party of Canada, and also to put in part a plan to try to create more conflicts. I can guarantee you what even Alberta is proposing is what Quebec wants, or what most likely done so far. Force you to pay heavy tax, and the taxes becoming slowly, obviously life become not less expensive, but you pay submissive to the state. And it's sad though, it's sad. Sorry, I said too much though.
No, you're fine.
No, you didn't. That was great. And
Yeah.
It's
I
just
do like to hear that there is support from the East out there, that not everybody in the East is like blinded by basically the bullshit that the fucking all the media there is feeding them, and also
Yeah,
and buying into the welfare state. It's like, oh yeah,
yeah.
I want to sit around and do nothing and get paid for it.
No, even people don't realize it. Even Quebec got a progressive tax. Everybody pays. Everybody pays. Even they got even the like I said, I'm working right. Like saying in Alberta, you work and you don't get tax until you get to a limit. I just don't remember right now what is the limit, how much you're allowed to work, and you not pay any tax. But when you're in Quebec, you reach around 1100. You start paying taxes. After $1,200, you start paying for the $1,200 the 60% tax. So you live in poverty. That's what Quebec is poor, and a lot of places complain about this province or this place. oh, Quebec gets away with everything. But actually, if you figure out the qualification formula, it's kind of a scam because I don't see it's helping the people. It's most likely the card of the politicians that get extra money. That's the only card I see there, though. It's not like even
Yeah, that's what
helping
Magic
one
was
place
saying.
either.
My friend from he's also from Quebec, but he's from outside of Montreal. And he said that like a lot of it's going to your mafia guys, like your failing businesses keep getting a lot of money, and then the politicians just seem to pocket the rest of it.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's a very big issue in Montreal, even.
Put it this way, even most people that say, put it this way, I'm more like, put it this way, a libertarian slash conservative because I believe in Western civilization values and some side of social programs, but heavily in the free market. I can say one thing: if Canada reach to the full potential to be a fair system like a republic, like the United States, plus reach out to use all the resources, you know how much the oil going down? At least to $5 the $5 the barrel. If that's how crucial is it. That's what even the Americans, they lobby Canada to say, okay, we want you to be independent, but don't affect us, especially companies with petroleum, because petroleum in Alberta is not, in United States is quite a big monopoly. So it's like, who is benefiting on it?
They are.
It's United States. It's not. We need to benefit on it because
and Saudi Arabia, don't forget them, and
Yeah.
Irving.
yeah,
And
everybody
Irving,
put it
who's
this
friends with Trudeau.
exactly. Put it this way: all the puppets in Ottawa, they got in a plan. What they're doing so far, they did well in the election. I don't give them crap. I told myself the first trip will be from Alberta, some in Saskatchewan, probably in BC, even New Brunswick. I say, well, we take the first troops to Ottawa with the People's Party of Canada, leading Max Bernier, attack them whatever we want, because even that's what I believe in him, Max. And now he's called Matt from Alberta, from Quebec. That's what he's calling himself. But even in terms of that, politicians in Ottawa, they will be do anything they can to control us. And the sad side, even government will be collapse themselves. They will be collapse themselves. Because millennials, we don't believe in big government. We live in a small, fair government, but not too big in terms of controlling industry, production, ownership. Because in Quebec, to get a gun is hard. It's pretty hard. It's more harder than in even the Alberta,
Yeah, no, and there's so many examples of government sticking its nose where it has no fucking business. CBC is a perfect example. Canada
Yeah.
Post is a perfect example. Fucking the fucking drivers ed places here were incorporated.
Yeah, you can put it this way. For instance, if you wonder what is the status called of Ottawa, or how they will be the status called of Ottawa these days, will be this. The Bloc is kind of pushing the same thing as the Liberal, the same shit. Larger scale, and that's it. NDP, the same shit. So now the mistakes they done in America, they were not implementing in Canada. Remember this thing? Like they want to promote healthcare, they want to promote low-income housing in some ways, like the education system. We got something like that in Canada, but we know like the same.
I've got to go now though. So thank you so much for having me on, and it was nice meeting you. My friend Magic said to tell you that Montreal is a trash can, but I'm only allowed.
It is.
I'm only allowed
Sadly.
to. I'm only allowed to say that because he's from Quebec. He gave me a Quebec card, apparently.
Yeah, Montreal is like a trash can because put it this way, we got the beautiful garbage in the streets. You see the code, you drive, you got a car, okay, make a traffic, impossible to drive. You got halts anywhere. And then rush hours at 5 o'clock, you're stuck in traffic. Forget about it, you're stuck in traffic. That's a chaos in Montreal. That's the thing. Even people don't, even the last election, not even anybody vote these days. They say, I don't give a damn anymore. I tell the people that you don't vote, most likely you let yourself granted for everything that's happening. Say, I don't care. I just want to live my life and probably save my money in the States. So I don't care about it much. And that's what they say. Seniors will say, oh, well, we have to clean out the government. We have to clean the government. But that's seniors that say, I don't care anymore. You know, that's what's happening, though.
I really get disappointed by apathy too, because you know it is